Now the interesting part is over, we can go home and sleep. Hopefully not.
Actually, after this indeed astonishing and diverse concert, it's my honor to ask Professor László Lovasz, President of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences and the World Science Forum President, to actually open the 9th World Science Forum. Professor Lovasz, the stage is yours.
Dear Mr. President, Your Royal Highness, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the World Science Forum. It is a great pleasure for me to greet all of you again in Budapest. It is such an honor for the Hungarian Academy of Sciences and us Hungarians to host over 1,000 scientists, science policymakers, representatives of international and national science institutions, government, and science communicators from 120 countries this year. Our program for the next 3 days is a joint effort of 150 speakers and moderators, many committed science organizations, and of course, most importantly, our main partners in the conferences of the World Science Forum, the UNESCO, the International Science Council, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the Inter-Academy Partnership, the World Academy of Sciences, and the European Academy Science Advisory Council. Your contribution has been the key to this forum, which we hope will live up to the standards of the World Science Forum in Jordan 2 years ago, which attracted a record number of participants. That last forum was chaired by Her Royal Highness, Princess Sumaya bint Al Hassan, and it is my special pleasure to greet Her Highness here in Budapest. It is also a pleasure to greet the scientists and distinguished representatives of the Republic of South Africa, which will host the next World Science Forum in 2021. And in particular, Dr. Blade Zimande, Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology. Dear ladies and gentlemen, a new contract between science and society in the 21st century, built on cooperation of scientists, politicians, leaders of economy and the media. This was the aim set by the organizers of the UNESCO World Conference of Science, the first intergovernmental meeting to discuss the role of science in 1999. This event took place in Budapest, and it was so successful that it gave rise to a follow-up sequence of conferences. This conference series, organized by the Academy, has become the World Science Forum. I cannot praise enough the wisdom of my predecessors for the launch and for the evolution of this initiative, and the governments that from the last 20 years supported the Academy in this endeavor. The biennial events of the Forum have become one of the most eminent tasks of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. Our dear guests, your host, the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, which is almost 200 years old, has gone through a difficult period since our last forum. Since this September, our Academy no longer manages its own independent research network. However, we still have numerous tasks to represent Hungarian science both at home and in the international field, to promote research that is outstanding in the Central European region, to ensure the freedom of scientific thought, to pass resolutions in the field of science ethics, to provide quality assurance in science, to prepare decisions for policymakers, and to cultivate international relationships. The most important vehicle for this latter task is this World Science Forum. As shown by our previous conferences, the Forum addresses the hottest topics of the scientific community, and decision makers tend to pay more and more attention to the opinions of researchers. The forum has been gaining significance steadily in the past 2 decades. Dear ladies and gentlemen, this forum focuses on the ethical problems scientists face and on the responsibility of researchers for the consequences of their scientific results. We wish to consider these important issues in a broad perspective. When talking about freedom of research, we must address questions like how to share resources between basic research and innovation. How can science funding be made more transparent and more just? Why is it so crucial for scientists to take part in the policymaking process? Or when talking about our responsibilities, we must consider issues of proper dissemination of results and of communication of science. How to distinguish pseudoscience from scientific methods? How do researchers and science communication experts see the situation of open access? What tasks does science have in reaching the aims set up in the UN 2030 agenda? How can science promote sustainable development? Let me use this last question to demonstrate how it requires the development of new communication techniques, the use of which are imperative in order to spread and popularize scientific results. What limits should we set for carbon dioxide emission necessary for providing the energy required by the ever-growing population of Earth? How should we communicate climate change, the signs of which are more and more clear? How should the press react? Should it communicate a pseudo-equilibrium between the opinion of 97% of scientists who consider climate change to be factual and that of the remaining 3%? How to demonstrate the consequences without appearing as stating empty threats or describing hopelessness? There are, of course, several possible answers for the above questions. Even the interpretation of these questions can be subject to a hot discussion, let alone the answers. The World Science Forum's objective cannot be to provide final, unquestionable answers, but we hope that we can contribute thoughts and arguments to the discussion of these questions. A discussion that probably never will end and perhaps never should. Our dear guests, I hope this random selection of topics from the rich agenda has demonstrated what complex topics determining the future of humanity we will be discussing here together in the following days. I hope the declaration that will be drafted as a result of our discussions will not only be a short summary of the most important thoughts communicated here at the forum, but it will serve as a guideline for policymakers. Dear ladies and gentlemen, Budapest meets all the requirements for becoming the scientific center of this region. However, our city is also famous for its versatile cultural life. I would like to urge you to use this opportunity and take part in the cultural programs beside discussing scientific problems. The organizers of the forum did their best to offer rich cultural experiences for the participants during these few days. Have a nice time in Budapest, and I hope your stay will be an unforgettable experience, both in terms of successful discussions at the forum and a pleasant stay in Hungary. Thereby, I open this forum.
Thank you, Mr. President, for these very thought-inspiring words. Before I invite our next speaker to the stage, I would like to ask you to put on your headphones now, unless you speak Hungarian, of course. You will need them in the next couple of minutes. Please make sure that the headphones are switched on and channel 1, number 1, is selected. Somewhere there is a channel selection tool. Please select channel number 1.
Everybody got it.
Probably, yes, thank you. It's an honor to welcome on stage His Excellency János Áder, the President of Hungary, who is one of the patrons of the World Science Forum and who is himself at the forefront of the fight for global sustainability. Please, Mr. President.
Good evening. Channel 1. Tisztelt Tudományos Világfórum, tisztelt Hölgyeim és
Participants of
Uraim!
the World Science Forum, esteemed ladies and gentlemen,
Azért várok egy
I will still wait those few moments
biztos, hogy
to
mindenki
get a feedback that
fölveszi
everybody
a fülhallgatót.
has actually set channel 1.
Nem látom önöket.
I don't see any of you in the dark.
Talán most már mindenki
Okay, so we're all set.
hallhatja, amit mondok.
Everybody can hear what I'm saying.
Idén 100 esztendeje
It's been 100 years
Lóránd, aki nem
this
csak nagyszerű fizikus,
year that Lóránd Ötvös, who passed away, who was a fantastic scientist, an outstanding leader, a legendary president of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. When 130 years ago, in 1889, he became the president of the Academy of Science, in his first speech, he said that science was a joint edifice. He said the following: nations are not working in different kinds of scientific disciplines. The edifice is the same, and everybody is contributing their share to constructing it. Something that one begins will be continued by another, and in the end, the result itself, what is created, is the fruit of the work of all those who have collaborated. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, what was true 130 years ago is true even more today. Science will develop and be richer through individuals, but it will never be only for individuals. The different researchers of different nations are working in science to find out the same truth and to understand it. So whatever Ötvös called the joint edifice might have been 130 years ago a distant bastion of science, an ivory tower of science. And in fact, this edifice of truth only revealed its secrets to a select few. 130 years ago, members of the public and the academia were far from one another. There were very few people who were interested, who were captivated by the results of science. And although the significance and the impact of science in changing life was not smaller back then. However, the work that was taking place in laboratories, in workshops and in offices was perhaps less known to the public. And the public could really create less bonds with the isolated world of academia. By the 21st century, it's not only successes that have grown in number, but also people who are keen on science. Back in the old days, researchers posed questions to one another or to themselves, without which there was no scientific progress. However, modern man has had such education, has such tools and such publicity, which make them more sensitive, more curious, and more demanding. People ask questions and expect answers. The mission of the World Science Forum from the outset has been to engage the society, public, and the decision makers. And it is perhaps this what differentiates it from everyday professional discussions. Aren't we wasting time? This is one of the thematic titles of this conference, with a huge question mark at the end. This question today is not only for any single scientific discipline. It is also economic, social, biological, environmental, medical, agricultural, demographic, or even hydrological question. Nowadays, there is no conference that will be without discussions on the protection of creation, sustainability, climate change, or water crisis for that matter, especially if it is the responsibility of science. Academic ethics are at the focus point of this discussion. So our concerned questions are all the more justifiable at such a forum. And let me just pose a few questions that I hope is also preoccupying you who will participate in the debate. Will economic science hear the caution of Nobel laureate William Nordhaus, who said that if we do not calculate the so-called externalia in our economic activities, we will pay a huge price at the social level, society level. The other question, will science help diminish the insatiable energy hunger of the world by solving the problem of long-term environment-friendly energy storage? What kind of responses will medical science have to the re-emergence of diseases thought to have been eradicated a long time ago? And what about the new diseases? When will agricultural science provide a response for soil degradation that is impacting so many areas? How long does it take to actually cultivate drought-resilient plants that can be produced in different parts of the world? Hydrological science, will they help to actually make better use of the diminishing per capita amount of water? Demography. Will demography give us a response to the more and more depressing demographic challenge? To paraphrase all this into one line, where are the limits of development? Where are the borders of our civilization? Will we learn the lesson from the story of old civilizations? Questions which for researchers are about strategy, method, technology, innovation, measurement and proof. And for us, these are all about life and death. So let us all work to ensure that this edifice of science that the Hungarian Loránd Eötvös talked about be not only an awe-inspiring memorial to human achievement, but that it be a shared refuge for all of us. I wish you inspiring debates, questions that go against taboos, a scientific conference, successful scientific discussion for every participant of the World Science Forum.
Thank you, Mr. President, for this inspirational speech and awakening words. I guess we are all agree here that we are working deliberately and very, very hardly to have these answers wherever we come. It's time to take your headphones now. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Shamila Nay Beduel, Assistant Director General for Natural Sciences of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, the UNESCO, to please come to the podium and deliver your welcome address. Ms. Assistant Director General, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Your Excellency, Mr. János Áder, President of Hungary, Your Excellency, Mr. Blade Nzimande, Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology of South Africa, all the other distinguished delegates, ambassadors, scientists, Your Excellencies. Dr. Laszlo Lovas, President of the Hungarian Academy of Science, UNESCO sincerely thanks you for associating us and being a partner with you. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, it is my great pleasure to be with you today and to welcome you all on behalf of UNESCO and the Assistant Director General, Madam Audrey Azoulay, to this 8th edition of the World Science Forum. Let me first express my gratitude to the government of Hungary for hosting this unique and unusual forum and for the warm hospitality with which we have been welcomed. Madam Azoulay regrets very much not to join you today. You may be aware that UNESCO is currently through its 40th General Conference, which will approve the program and budget for the next biennium. Hence, the Director General sincerely regrets not to be able to join you here today. UNESCO is both honored and really delighted to be a partner in the organization of this forum, which is a highlight in the long-standing cooperation between the government of Hungary and UNESCO in the area of science. I am deeply touched, having seen the musicians here today, and one of the slides that appeared on top was, "Life without striving and without passion, how can we live?" And that is exactly how it is here today. Since the idea was born here in Budapest 20 years ago, it is with great pride that we see the World Science Forum gaining in reputation and relevance with every edition, with passion for science and culture and the arts. It is encouraging to see the growing importance given here to ensuring that regional and gender balance in the sessions, as well as the active involvement of scientists, youth, and artists, as well as science journalists from across the world, can participate in this unique forum, the World Science Forum. Indeed, science flourishes through dialogue, through the interaction between disciplines and experiences, between knowledge systems, peoples, and cultures. People, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships. These are the core pillars of the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda. As His Excellency and the President has indicated earlier on, how can we not consider science within the Sustainable Development Goals? As our planet faces a rising number of challenges, including the demographic challenges, climate change, biodiversity loss, and ecosystem decline, natural disasters, how can we not acknowledge scientific knowledge more important than ever? How can we not acknowledge the science, the ethics, and responsibility of our scientists across the world? What kind of responsible science do we need today to meet the developing countries' needs? What kind of science do we need today to meet the needs of the small island developing states, 47 of them, who may disappear in a few years' time, whose peoples, culture, and knowledge would also disappear with the problems of climate change? To rise to these challenges, we need to increase investment in science, research, and technology, especially with the view to developing innovative solutions, solutions which are applicable, which meet the needs of sustainable development. How can we speak of meeting the sustainable development goals without access to water, without access to food, and without providing the basics to empower women and our people across the world? The future of the scientific endeavor is tightly linked to public attitude, public understanding, citizen science, and scientific literacy. If we want to speak about scientific literacy today, we need also to talk about citizen science, climate knowledge, and climate literacy. There is a real urgency to provide the general public with opportunities to understand and to gauge in setting the agenda, debating the uses and benefits of science while making scientific research accessible and understandable to all peoples of the world without discrimination and without boundaries. This is particularly true today since our societies become more dependent on technologies, and science has a more pivotal role than ever in defining the present and the future of mankind. However, in spite of the considerable opportunities opened up by scientific advances entire populations are living below the poverty line. Hence, what responsibility for science today? What do we define as ethics of science? How can we look at the world deterioration of the environment as a serious threat to every survival of the human race? There is no planet B. This science forum occurs at a moment when the pace and scale of revolution in science and technology opens up a myriad of opportunities, but also could result in increasing the gap between the haves and the have-not. How can we hence ensure that we have a responsible and ethical science to ensure that we leave no one behind, from the smallest Pacific island countries to the largest countries in the world? Hence, it raises serious ethical concerns about unbridled scientific progress. This forum on ethics and responsibility of science is therefore extremely timely. Your Excellencies, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, since its involvement in promoting international reflection on the ethics of life sciences in the 1970s, UNESCO continues to build and reinforce the linkages among ethicists, scientists, policymakers, judges, journalists, civil society, and member states in enacting sound and reasoned policies for ethical, responsible science and technology. In fact, as we speak here today, the 193 UNESCO member states are meeting right now in Paris and deciding on the first steps towards a new legal instrument to guide the future of science and scientific advances. This new legal instrument would be an open science to reduce the gap and the knowledge divide between the developed and the developing countries. This new legal instrument being proposed by UNESCO is to ensure that no one is left behind, that the advances of science, technology, and innovation meets the needs of all people on the planet. Building on the 2017 UNESCO recommendation on science and scientific researchers, this new instrument is expected to include a recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence and really a new global movement and UNESCO recommendation on open science, a definition, a common definition, knowledge sharing, and building knowledge societies across the world. Both of these are to be cooperatively developed by multi-stakeholders by 2021. This, we assure you, will be done by means that will be robust, wide-ranging debates with many stakeholders, including the different knowledge streams which our indigenous knowledge societies, as well as local knowledge to adapt to climate change. The artificial intelligence and open science urgently requires the kind of vigorous and broad dialogue that we see here today with our distinguished scientists. In turn, the new legal instruments on artificial intelligence and open science will underpin science, technology, and innovation in the 21st century. We cannot afford to leave anyone behind. We need science that responds to the needs and aspirations of societies. Science that is open, multidisciplinary, inclusive, participative, and consensus-driven, meeting the needs of every individual across the world. We need a science that is more connected to society and grounded in ethics and human rights. We expect that the results of this World Science Forum will feed into these timely global reflections at UNESCO on the future of science. I therefore wish you a successful meeting, fruitful discussions. On behalf of UNESCO and the Director General, we are humbly grateful to be part of this important movement of the World Science Forum, and I would like to sincerely thank the President and the government of Hungary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Assistant Director General. These are truly very serious questions, very deeply touching everyone. Our next welcome address will be delivered by the President of the International Science Council, Professor Daya Reddy. Professor Reddy, please step to the podium. Thank you. Please welcome.
Your Excellency, President János Áder, President of Hungary, Excellency Minister Dr. Blade-Nzimande, Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology of South Africa, Dr. László Lovász, President of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences and President of the World Science Forum, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it really is a great pleasure for me to address you on behalf of the International Science Council. The Council was established in July of 2018 and is the result of a merger between ICSU, the International Council for Science, and the International Social Science Council. I'm pleased to acknowledge the ISC as the successor to ICSU in its role as partner organization of the World Science Forum. The vision of the International Science Council is to advance science as a global public good. It is a vision of universal accessibility to and sharing of scientific knowledge and expertise, of inclusivity, and of opportunities for scientific education and capacity development. As part of its mission, the ISC strives to be a trusted voice that, in addition to promoting creativity, research and scholarship, places emphasis on the protection of scientific freedom and on advocating principles for the ethical and responsible practice of science. Thus, the theme of the 2019 World Science Forum, namely of ethics and responsibility in science, is one that resonates in a deep way with the mission of the International Science Council. The principles of freedom and responsibility in science go hand in hand. The right to engage in scientific inquiry, pursue and communicate knowledge, and to associate freely in carrying out such activities cannot be separated from the responsibility of scientists to uphold the highest ethical standards when pursuing their work and to contribute their knowledge in the public space. Ladies and gentlemen, the digital revolution has changed irrevocably the circumstances under which news, information, and knowledge are communicated. A particular feature is the growth and dissemination of manipulated or fabricated information, lacking editorial norms and processes for ensuring accuracy. Coupled to these developments are expressions of science denialism and challenges to the scientific consensus with the adoption of ideological, pseudoscientific or anti-scientific positions on topics such as climate change, genetic modification, and vaccination. These developments pose a fundamental attack on the value and the values of science. They serve also to highlight the responsibility of scientists to be more than mere brokers of scientific information. We also have roles in the public discourse, often as advocates, particularly on the underpinnings of the consensus views that ought to inform policymakers and broader society. Policymakers and civil society are then in the best position to understand the threat posed by pseudoscientific views and actions if we, as a scientific community, recognize and act on our responsibility to ensure that scientific results are made widely accessible in a comprehensible manner. We must note at the same time the implication here of a social contract that mandates that science and scientists uphold a set of scientific values, become engaged with integrity and honesty, and act ethically. With such an open and trusting relationship between scientists and broader society and policymakers, the general public are in a position also to engage responsibly and knowledgeably on the consequences of modern scientific developments. If I may give an example, let's take genome editing, which carries with it unprecedented potential in agriculture and healthcare and other areas, but which is accompanied also by serious ethical issues. It is vital that broader society be in a position to understand and to engage knowledgeably with the ethical dimensions of such dramatic developments. At any given time, ethics and responsibility, or issues of ethics and responsibility, are central to scientific conduct. But I hope that my brief remarks have made clear the particular relevance and importance of these issues in the contemporary context. So it is timely that, as participants from the worlds of science, education, and civil society, we have the opportunity over the next few days to seek a greater understanding of the place of ethics and responsibility as we strive to advance science as a global public good. I thank and congratulate our hosts, the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, and extend my wishes for an extremely successful forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Reddy. The topics that you mentioned was never ever more actual than nowadays, and it's also very important as many people to work on that as it can. So we are really happy about that, that as Professor Lovas emphasized, that we reached a record of participants this year. And now I would like to ask Professor Margaret Hamburg, the chair of the board of the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences, to welcome the audience of the World Science Forum. Professor Hamburg, please come to the stage.
Thank you very much and good evening. It's a great honor to be here and to be in this beautiful and historic city of Budapest. First, let me recognize His Excellency János Áder, President of Hungary, the Hungarian Academy of Sciences President László Lovász, and UNESCO Assistant Director General Shamia Nair Budael. We appreciate your hospitality and for making this meeting possible. I also want to recognize fellow World Science Forum partner, the International Science Council, represented by Professor Daya Reddy, Council President. And with an eye to the future forum, Minister Nzimande of South Africa. It's a true honor and humbling to be here representing the AAAS, and with our partners to welcome you, distinguished participants, to the World Science Forum. The AAAS exists to advance science, engineering, and innovation throughout the world for the benefit of all people, which is really the same reason why we are here today. During the forum this week, we'll remind ourselves of the broad impact our collective work can have. We'll discuss how to advance science ethically, responsibly, and in continuing dialogue with our communities, and how to make sure the results of science, testable, reproducible knowledge, new products and innovations that help us understand and improve our world can reach the whole of society. It is timely for us to pause from our research, from our policy making, from all of our day jobs, to ask these questions here and now. This meeting is timely because, frankly, too often and in too many places, the ideals and practice of science are being questioned, and worse, are under attack. Such principles as the ethical and transparent conduct of science, the freedom and independence of scientists and of the scientific pursuit, and the use of evidence in policy decisions now face new and disturbing pressures and scrutiny. In many parts of the world right now, these ideas are threatened by isolationist policies, the silencing of the free press, and the rampant spread of misinformation. The truth is, we live in a golden age for science in so many ways. The pace of science has never been faster, nor the range of accomplishments so vast and impressive. The changing nature of our understandings of ourselves and of our world has never been greater, revolutionary in many domains. Science today enables us not only to reveal the secrets of the universe and how things work, but to harness that science in the service of society, to save lives, to improve health and the quality of life, to catalyze new technologies, to power our economies, and to make the world a better, safer place. The power of science is immense, but it must be pursued and applied with the utmost of ethics and responsibility. This meeting offers the opportunity for the kind of intensive, open, thoughtful, and responsible dialogue that is so badly needed at this time. Over many years now, the World Science Forum has come to stand for a commitment to scientific evidence, academic freedom, and the fulfillment of the right to science all over the world. I'm delighted to be here, and I look forward to the contributions that this World Science Forum will make. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hamburg. You may have noticed by now that we have a fairly decent representation of South African speakers in the program of World Science Forum. Well, this is not a simple coincidence, because the main reason being that South Africa will host the next World Science Forum in 2021. So it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Dr. Bongikosi Blade Nzimande, Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation of South Africa. Minister Nzimande, please take the floor. Please welcome.
Program directors, firstly, allow me to acknowledge our host, His Excellency, Mr. János Áder, President of Hungary, and Professor Lovas, the President of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences and of the World Science Forum. I would also like to recognize the senior representatives of the World Science Forum partners, UNESCO Assistant Director General, Dr. Shamila Neh-Bedouel, a compatriot, President of the International Science Council, Professor Daya Reddy, another compatriot, as has been noted by the program directors. It's not a conspiracy to take over the World Science Forum at all. Dr. Anne Margaret Hamburg, the chair of the board of the Association of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, esteemed and learned guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you during this opening session. At the outset, I would like to bring to you a message of congratulations from my government and indeed the broader African science community to the World Science Forum on its 20th anniversary. Over the past 2 decades, the World Science Forum has firmly established itself as one of the leading global platforms for science diplomacy, promoting international cooperation in science, and harnessing science as an instrument for global good. In this process, the World Science Forum influenced the organization of similar forums across the world, including our own Science Forum South Africa, which will be held for the 5th time in early December. This year's World Science Forum theme of science, ethic, and responsibility is highly appropriate, as there is a pressing global imperative to ensure that science becomes more responsive to society's needs, including through addressing ethical considerations related to the scientific enterprise. This is especially crucial for us in Africa, where science must respond to our challenges related to poverty, systemic social injustice, inequality, and also the imperatives of building inclusive societies. Understanding and addressing the ethical considerations related to the research response to chronic and infectious disease is, for example, a key priority. Researchers in Africa are particularly vulnerable to some of the drivers that can undermine the integrity of research, including severe funding constraints and the need to compete with those in the global north who have access to greater resources and support systems. I therefore hope that the deliberations at this forum will enable us to address challenges in developing countries related to inadequate institutional support at a research management level, poor systems for data management, as well as intellectual property protection and technology transfer, which often result in unequal partnerships and suboptimal collaboration. If we fail to do so, the enormous potential of science in the global south will not be unleashed for the greater good of humanity. It is our very strong belief as South Africa that innovation is everywhere, both in the urban and the rural areas, amongst the wealthy as well as amongst the poor. In South Africa, our government's 2019 white paper on science, technology and innovation commits to promoting a national responsible research and integrity agenda to help local researchers to collaborate and compete with foreign counterparts in a world where ethical concerns, for example, fair trade, and environmental concerns such as emission standards are increasingly influencing competitiveness. Furthermore, insufficient attention to ethics and integrity in science leads to an erosion of public trust in scientific enterprise, something that we dare not allow. In anticipation of our hosting of the World Science Forum in South Africa, which will in May 2021, we are also going to be hosting the 7th World Conference on Research Integrity. That is prior to the World Science Forum in December 2021. Like the World Science Forum, this will be the first time that this important conference will be held on the African soil. It will be an opportunity to look at the promotion of research ethics and integrity through an African lens. It will also provide a platform for African scientists to network around the importance of safeguarding and ensuring the integrity of their work, taking forward the discussion we will have this week here in Budapest. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, please accept this appeal. We live in uncertain times. Despite the immense and shared societal challenges faced by our planet, global solidarity and partnerships in many quarters are, however, under threat. Therefore, platforms like the World Science Forum are thus more needed than ever. Our collective mission here in Budapest is therefore to unite through science and make science work for all our planet's inhabitants, including the most vulnerable and excluded. We do need to promote science for equality, science for justice, including ecological justice. Our call to arms should be to be stronger together and through science. I wish you all rich and productive discussions during the coming days. I look forward to seeing all of you in Cape Town, South Africa in 2021. And one of the things that we do offer in Africa, of course, is the sun in abundance. So there is no excuse for not going to South Africa, where we will be building on the outcomes of Budapest 2019. We will also be seeking to advance the global agenda to harness science as the world's most powerful instrument for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. It's absolutely true that innovation is everywhere. As I wanted to explain the meaning of this word to my children, I brought that example that if you haven't done your homework and you try to avoid the punishment of the teachers, you try to find out so many innovative solutions to solve the situation. So it's true for everybody that innovation is a must, a need. So as the next, it's my pleasure now to announce the message of the United Nations Secretary General, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, to the participants of the World Science Forum. The message will be presented by Dr. Shamila Nair Bedouel, Assistant Director General of the UNESCO. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening once again. I assure you this was not planned by South Africa. So, Excellencies, President of Hungary, Your Excellencies, the Ministers, President of International Science Council, Dr. Margaret Hamburg, Board of the American Association of Advancement of Science, and distinguished Dr. Laszlo Lavas. I have a difficult task in front of me, and I need to read the message to the World Science Forum from His Excellency, the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres. So please bear with me. I have to read a speech on his behalf, which has been forwarded to us today and requested specifically that he shares with you his words. I quote, "I am pleased to address the World Science Forum on its 20th anniversary. Science stands at the heart of the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It can help us meet critical global challenges like tackling the climate crisis, eradicating poverty, promoting equitable growth, and preparing for natural disasters. I welcome the forum's focus this year on science, ethics, and responsibility. The ethical implications of today's scientific and technological developments, from artificial intelligence to genetic engineering, are so far-reaching that they can only be addressed through international coordination, cooperation, and action. To move forward on our path to sustainable development, we must combine scientific progress with responsible research and risk management. This calls for science that is inclusive, transparent, and grounded in ethics and human rights. Over the past 20 years, the World Science Forum has become a leading platform for scientific diplomacy, highlighting the most pressing challenges of our time and developing solutions to address them. I congratulate you on your success and count on you to promote science for peace, prosperity, and human rights for all on a healthy planet." I unquote Mr. Antonio Guterres. Thank you.